Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezra Hashem together on Daf Tezvav Amud Beis at the bottom, the last 6 lines. From the 2 dots. The Gemara is this darshaning various words in the Kriya Shema. Says the Gemara, Tani Rav Ovadia Kamei de Rava, V'limaditem Sheyeh limudcha tam. The Gemara makes a drasha from the word limaditem, that there are 2 parts to this word, limud and tam. Tam means complete. And therefore, says the Gemara, Sheyitein revach bein advokim. You should make a space between those words that have the same letter in the beginning of the second word, at the end of the first word. For example, al levavecho. If you say it quickly, you can then swallow the word into one and say al levavecho. So make a separation between the 2 and say al levavecho. Says the Gemara to explain, Ani Rava Basrei. Ani Rava explained after Rav Ovadia with the following examples. Kegon al levavecho, al levavchem, bechol levavecho, bechol levavchem, esev besodcho, va'avadetem mehero, hakanof pesil, eschem me'oretz. Now here, the truth is there are 2 examples that seem to be out of place, because we said if it has the same letter at the end of the first word, which is the same letter in the beginning of the second word, you can swallow into one. But you have 2 examples over here. Esev besodcha, the last letter of the word Esev is a vase. Besodcha is a base. So if you say it quickly, you won't swallow it. Here the Gemara is concerned, maybe you'll say Esev besodcha. You'll use the vase for besodcha and then put the 2 together quickly. Similarly, we find hakanaf pesil. There's a fei and there's a pei. But if you say both with a fei, hakanaf seal, then you have the same problem. Says the Gemara, what kind of schar does a person get when he will say the Kriya Shema with a diktuk, with careful type of reading? Says the Gemara, Omar Rabbi Chama, Rabbi Chanino. Kol hakore Kriya Shema umedaktek be'osioseho mitzanin lo gehinnom. They will cool off Gehinnom. Says the Gemara based on a posuk, shenemar befares shakai melochim bo. When Hashem scattered kings in it, tashleg betzalmoin. Those that are in darkness will become whitened. Says the Gemara, al tikri befares. Don't read that he will scatter. Ela befaresh, that he will make clear. Al tikri betzalmoin. Don't read that is darkened. Ela betzalmovis. Tzalmovis is a reference to Gehinnom. Tzel movis. It's the tzel shadow of the movis. When a person dies, is the Gehinnom. So here the idea is that a person is going to mitametz. He's going to then put an effort to then mechameim, heat himself up and change his temperature, so to speak. When saying Kriya Shema, then Mida Keneged Mida, they'll change the temperature in Gehinnom for that person as well. Says the Gemara, in the same author, but a different subject, not to do with the Kriya Shema. V'omer Rabbi Chama b'Rabbi Chanina, Lama nismechu oy halim lenecholim. Why in the words of Bilam, when he is praising Klal Yisrael, he blesses Klal Yisrael, when he's so enamored by seeing how they dwell together. Ma'toivu alecha Yaakov, he also mentions Oyalim and Necholim together. Dirshu ki Necholim nitoyu ki ganois ale nahar ki Oyalim nota. So he puts the Necholim and the Oyalim, he puts them together. The Gemara wants to know, excuse me, what is the connection between these 2 things, that one is next to the other here in the pasuk? Says the Gemara, Loimer lecha, to tell you the following: Ma necholim ma'alines ha'odam mituma letahara. Just as a person who is tamei, he submerges him, he's tovel himself in a nahar, he becomes tahor. So too, af oyalim ma'alines ha'odam mikaf choyve lekaf zchus. So too, the oyalim referring to the bate midrashos. When a person is oisik in Torah, therefore he will gain such a zechus that he will then be going from kaf choyve to kaf zechus as a result of the kapara that he gains from the amelus in Torah. Says the Gemara, a quotation from the Mishnah. Here there's no machlokes. Everybody agrees that when it comes to saying Kriya Shema out of order, limafreya lo yatsa. Says the Gemara the following: Rabbi Ami, Rabbi Asi havu kokatrin le ganana le Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi were tying the chuppah for Rabbi Elazar. Omar lohu, Rabbi Elazar said to them, Ada hachi v'achim. Meanwhile, while you're tying the chuppah for my chasana, then izo v'ashmek milsa the Beit Midrasha. Let me go to the Beit Medrash and hear a shmua what they're teaching there. V'aisi v'eimalacha, and then I'll come back and tell you the teaching. So also he went, Ashkecha letana dektonik hamedi Rabbi Yochanan, and he found that they were teaching the following in front of Rabbi Yochanan. Kara v'ta ve'ena yodeya lehechen ta. If a person reads the Kriya Shema, so if he knows where he made a mistake, so then he just goes to that place where he made the mistake, and then he says Kriya Shema from then on. But what happens if a person makes a mistake while reading the Kriya Shema and he does not know where he made the mistake? So it says it depends. If so if he has no idea whatsoever, so then he goes to the beginning of the Kriya Shema. But let's say it's be'emtza haperek, he knows that he made a mistake somewhere in the middle of a perek, but he doesn't know where, then yachzor lerosh, then he goes back to the beginning of that perek. Bein perek leperek, if he's between one of the prokim, either between the first and the second, or between the second and third, but he doesn't know which one, then the din is yachzor leperek rishon. He's machmer to go between the first and the second perek. If he made a mistake, ben ksiva leksiva, he doesn't know before which ksiva is he. Uchsavtem mizuzois beisecho vish arecho. He doesn't know. Is in the first ksiva uchsavtem in the first paragraph, or the uchsavtem al mizuzois beisecho vish arecho is going on the second paragraph. It says that Tosefta yachzor leksiva rishon. He goes back to the first ksiva. Omar le Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan adds, Lo ishanu ela shelo posach b'leman yirbu yemeichem. This is all talking when you made a mistake and you don't know where you are, but you didn't yet get to leman yirbu. Aval posach b'leman yirbu yemeichem. But a person already read those words, leman yirbu yemeichem, at the end of the second paragraph, and he begins the third paragraph. Then sarche nokit v'asi. Then you should know he finished and completed that paragraph without making a mistake, and he doesn't have to go back. Also, v'omar lahu. So Rabbi Elazar came back and he told Rabbi Ami Be'asi what he had learned. Omrei le, they said back to him, Ilu lo banu ela lishmoya davar zeh dayenu. If we only came to hear this word, these words of Rabbi Yochanan, who add on to the Tosefta, that once you get to leman yirbu yemeichem, then you already go what's called the ragilus. You already go in a way that you are accustomed to going, and therefore you wouldn't make a mistake after that. That is already enough dayenu to mechadesh such a halacha that we didn't know until now. Now the Gemara brings a Mishnah. The Mishnah discusses payalim, people who are working. For example, a person is in a tree, cutting down parts of the tree. He's cutting down the leaves, he's cutting down the branches, and he's working on that tree. Or he's on a wall, and now it comes time to say Kriya Shema. What should he do? Should he say Kriya Shema there, or should he go down and then say Kriya Shema? Says the Mishnah, Ha'umnin karim berosh ha'ilam berosh ha'nidbach. Those who are working on a tree, or they are on a wall, a stone wall, and the time of Kriya Shema comes, they should say Kriya Shema there. Masha einon rashoin la'asois kain b'tfila. Whereas when it comes to the tefillah, the Shmona Esrei, which requires more time and more kavanah, therefore, there's a concern, therefore, that they'll be worried that they're going to fall. They'll lose their concentration. Therefore, they cannot say the tefillah either in the tree or on the wall. Rather, they must come down and then say tefillah. The Mishnah goes on to explain when there would be a petur for a person to say Kriya Shema. Chosen poter mikriya Shema laila harishoina v'ad motzei Shabbos im lo yasa ma'aseh. A chosen, there the Gemara in the Mishnah and Ksuvas in the very beginning of the Masechta tells us that the typical time that a chosen would get married would be Yom Revi. So if he did not then fulfill the mitzvah with his wife the first 4 nights until Motzei Shabbos, then he is potter from Kriya Shema, because he is torud. His machshava, his mind, is busy thinking about the Be'ila mitzvah with his wife. Says the Gemara, but after that, he's no longer torud. Then he's more miyusha bihdas, and he can say the Kriya Shema b'kavana. Says the Mishnah, u'maisa b'Rabbi Gamliel, shenasa isha v'kar laila harishoina, that he got married and he said Kriya Shema that very first night that he got married. Omru lo talmidov, limadetanu rabbeinu, shechasen poter mikriya Shema. Didn't you teach us, Rebbe, that a chasen is poter from saying Kriya Shema? So why did you say Kriya Shema? Omar lehem eini shomea lachem levatel hemeni malchu shamayim afilu sho achas. I am able to mechavein properly in the Kriya Shema, and therefore don't mevatel from me even one moment, even a shah achas, of being mekabel ol malchus shomayim. Now the Gemara brings a brisa to expand on our Mishnah. Says the Gemara, Tonu Rabbanon ha'umnin karim b'rosh ha'ilon u'b'rosh ha'nidbach. The person who is working, those po'alim who are in the tree or on the wall, and times for Kriya Shema comes, he is to say Kriya Shema in that place. U'mispalalim b'rosh ha'zayis b'rosh ha'te'ena. And if he is in a tree that is a zayis, an olive tree, or a fig tree, where there's a lot of branches, a lot of leaves, and it's thick, so then he can even say tefillah, which takes longer time and more concentration. Usha'ar kele ilonas, however, all other trees, yardin lamata, umispalalim. Then he must go down and daven. Says the Brisa further, ubalabayis, ben kach u ben kach, yored lamato mispalo. If it's a balabais who's working for himself, he doesn't have the dispensation to say to tefillah while he is on the tree, even if it's a te'ena or even if it's a zayis. Rather, he must go down and daven the Shmona Esrei. Lefishein daitam yusheves alov, because it's not the ideal place to say Shmona Esrei, and therefore he must go down. The Chacham were not makil on such a person. Ask the Gemara, Rami lei mori barat bora de bas Shmuel lerova. Tnan, it says in the Mishnah, ha'umnin karin b'rosh ha'ilon b'rosh ha'nidbach. Alma lo boy kavana. Obviously, they don't need kavana because while they're working, they can go ahead and say Kriya Shema in the tree or on the wall. V'ramini, but the Brisa says hakarei es Shema tzar sheyichaven es liboy. He must have concentration, have kavanas halev on the words that he is saying. Shenemar, Shema Yisrael. Ulahalon huomer haskes ushma Yisrael. There's a pasuk later on that says, haskes, pay attention, ushma, and listen Yisrael. Ma lahalon bahaskes, just as later on, haskes, you must pay attention to the words that you're saying, what you're doing. Afkan bahaskes. So too, by the Kriya Shema, you also have to pay attention to the words and say it with kavanas halev. So how can the Payalim say Kriya Shema while they are on the tree or while they are on the wall? Ishtik. So he was quiet. He didn't know what to answer. Omar le, he said, Midi shamialoch beho. Did you hear something about this? Omar le, he said, Hachi Omar Rav Sheshet. This is what Rav Sheshet explained. V'husha beteilim malachton v'kar. We're talking about Payalim who stop doing their malacha on the tree or on the wall. Then they say the Kriya Shema. Says the Gemara v'hatanya. And behold, it says in the Brisa, Beis Hillel Oimrim, Oiskim b'malachton v'karin. You can be oiseg in your malacha and read the Kriya Shema. So it implies that they're still involved in their malacha. Says the Gemara, Kashya, it's not difficult. Ha beperek rishon, ha beperek sheni. The first perek, one has to have kavanas halev to be yotzei. But b'di eved, if a person was not mechavein liboy for the rest of the Kriya Shema, he is yotza. Now the Gemara brings a brisa further about workers to define what type of workers we're talking about. Tonu Rabbanon. Hapayalim shahayu oisim malacha eitzel bal habayis. Those workers are doing malacha by a balabayis. Karin Kriya Shema u'mevarchin lefaneu la'achareo. They read Kriya Shema and they say the birkos Kriya Shema both before and after. Ve'oichlin piton umevarchin lefoneu lachareho. And they eat their pita, their bread, and they say Baruch Hashem hamoitzi lechem min haaretz before they eat the bread, and they say Birkas Hamazon after eating the bread. Umispalelin tefillah shel shmona esrei. And they daven the shmona esrei. Aval ein yardin lifnei hateva ve'ein noisin kapeim. But they can't be the shliach tzibur, and they also can't do Birkas Kohanim, because that takes too long. Ask the Gemara v'hatanya, but it says in the Brisa me'ein shmona esrei, that the Payalim, they only do me'ein shmona esrei, which is called havinenu, the 3 brachos in the beginning of the shmona esrei, and the 3 brachos in the end of the shmona esrei, and then there's a composite bracha in the middle, a total of 7 brachos, much shorter than the regular shmona esrei brachos. Says the Gemara, Rav Sheshes lo kasha. It's not difficult. Ha Rabbi Gamliel, ha Rabbi Yehoshua. That which we said, you say shmona esrei, the Payalim say shmona esrei, that's talking according to Rabbi Gamliel, who requires that you say shmona esrei brachos every day. And that which says me'ein shmona esrei, Rabbi Yehoshua says that you could say me'ein shmona esrei brachos every day. Ask the Gemara, if so, Rabbi Yehoshua, my area Payalim, afilu kol adam nami. Why mention Payalim specifically? Everybody can say me'ein shmona esrei brachos according to Rabbi Yehoshua. Says the Gemara, Eli'idi v'idi Rabbi Gamliel. Both this and that is Rabbi Gamliel. As follows, V'lo kasha. Kan ba'oisin b'schoron, kan ba'oisin b'sudasin. The Gemara brings the yishuv as follows, that when it comes to the Payalim who are being paid not only for their work by getting fed, but they're also being paid wages, so then they have to be more careful with their time, and they can only say me'ein shmona esrei. Whereas those workers who are only being paid by being given food, by being given a su'uda, then they can even say the entire shmona esrei yud ches brachos. V'hatanya, the Gemara brings now benichusa araya from a brisa. Hapoyalim shehoyu oisim b'malacha etzel balabayis. Those workers who are doing labor in front of the balabayis by being hired out, korin kriya shema umispalelin. They read Kriya Shema and they daven. Ve'oichlin piton ve'ein mevarchin lefonel, ava mevarchin la'acharei shtayim. And when they eat their bread meal, they don't make birkas hamoitzi, which is their rabbanon, but they do say an abridged version of the birkas hamazon. They say 2 out of the 3 brachos as follows. Ketzad. Bracha rishona kitikuna. The first bracha of Hazon is complete, the regular bracha. Shnia, the second one, however, Poseach bebrichas haaretz, v'kolim boina Yerushalayim bebirkas haaretz. It begins with birkas haaretz. It then goes on to speak about also bonei Yerushalayim, and it concludes with birkas haaretz. Ba'ameh devar mamurim. When is this so that they have to make an abridged birkas hamazon? Ba'oisim b'schoron. When they get hired out and they're getting paid in addition to the food, but even wages. Aval oisim b'suudasan, but those who are only getting paid by being fed, or shahaya balabais meisa b'iman, or the balabais is together eating with them, showing that he's maskim, he agrees, he allows them to then say a bigger type of birkas hamazon, then mevarchin kitikuna. Then they say the bracha kitikuna. The Gemara quotes now the Mishnah that says there's an additional p'tur. When a person is a chassan and he's marrying a woman, so then that chassan is going to be pater from Kriya Shema in certain instances. Says the Gemara to explain, Tonu Rabbanan, B'shivdecha b'veisecha. In the Kriya Shema we say the words B'shivdecha u'b'veisecha. B'shivdecha b'veisecha prat la'oisek b'mitzvah. U'v'lechtecha v'derech prat l'chassan. The words B'shivdecha b'veisecha comes to exclude somebody who's involved in a mitzvah. He's oisik b'mitzvah, thereby he's pater from the mitzvah, in this case Kriya Shema. V'lechtecha v'derech is referring to somebody who's a chassan, who's now going to be pater from the Kriya Shema as a chassan. Mikan amru, hakoines is ha-besula, a chassan who is entering a marriage with a besula, therefore he's torrid on the besulim, he's pater from saying Kriya Shema. Ves ha-almana chayiv, whereas the almana that he's marrying, he's chayiv to say Kriya Shema, he doesn't have the same petur. My mashna, now the Gemara wants to know, where do we see that these drashos are indeed Potter min ha-mitzvah of Kriya Shema, either because he's oisik b'mitzvah or that he's oisik b'tirda the mitzvah. Omer Rav Papa, ki derech ma derech rishus af hachanami rishus. Says the Gemara, uvelech decha v'derech, but derech means that you're doing involved with something that's a rishus, a personal matter. And therefore, when a person is all in a personal matter, he has to put aside his personal matter to do a mitzvah. And therefore, I say Kriya Shema. Ask the Gemara, Milo yaskinan tega'ozil lidvar mitzvah? Are we not discussing a case where a person might be involved in doing a mitzvah? He's on the road, he's on the derech by doing a mitzvah. Va'afilu hochi amarachmana likri. And still, the Torah says he must read. Imkain, ask the Gemara, then lema kro beleches. Let the pasuk say beleches. My belechtecha. Why does it say in your traveling? Shma mina beleches didoch hu de mechayeves ha de mitzvah petiras. Therefore, it's coming to say in your personal travelings, a devar rishus. Then you're obligated to say the mitzvah of Kriya Shema. But if you're involved in a mitzvah, in this case, you'll be involved even in not only going to do a mitzvah, but you have an involvement in a tirda the mitzvah. Your machshava is tarud. You're going to be potter from saying Kriya Shema. Ihochi frek the Gemara. Once you say that you have a petur of oisik b'mitzvah tapater min mitzvah by the chosin, then my area hakoines is a besula, afilu koines is almona nami. Then why say that the chosin is only potter from Kriya Shema when he enters a relationship of marriage with a besula, but now when he comes to marry an almona? Says the Gemara, no, because hacha tarid, for hacha lo tarid. When it comes to the besula, so then his machshav is tarid on the besulim, and therefore that patters him up from saying Kriya Shema because he has a tirda the mitzvah. But when it comes to the person who's marrying an almana, that chasen doesn't have the same tirda the machshava of besulim. Says the Gemara, still imishum tirda. If indeed there is a tirda that is a petur for a person, then afilu tava sfinasa bayam nami. Even if a person has a ship that's sunk in the sea, tremendous loss, he'll have a tirda the machshava. That should be a petur then of Kriya Shema and other mitzvahs as well. Says the Gemara, no. The Gemara says, if that's so, the Gemara continues to ask, Alama Amar Rabbi Abba by Zavda Marav, why does he say Ovel Chayiv become mitzvahs ha'amuras b'Torah? That an Ovel who is being misabel and mourning over the 7 close relatives is chayiv in all of the mitzvahs of the Torah. Chutz min tefillin, with the exception of tefillin sharei nemar bohen pe'er, because there tefillin are called pe'er. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, pe'ercha chovush alecha. HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes to Yechezkel HaNavi and says, although you are an ovel, but you must wear tefillin. Mashma, that all other avelim are potter from tefillin. But when it comes to the other mitzvahs, the ovel is chayiv in those mitzvahs. So why is that so? Harei, he has tirda the machshava. Says the Gemara, Amrei, hasam tirda the rishus, hacha tirda the mitzvah. The difference is that over there, when it comes to the person's svina that's tava bayam, that sinks in the sea, and even in the case of an ovel, although he has to be misnaheg with avelus, but that ovel is only oisik and tirda the rishus, because he's not mischayiv to then becoming the star for the nifter. It's true he has to feel the loss, but he's able to then push aside those feelings in order to say Kriya Shema. Masha'enken, when it comes to the chassan, he has tirda the machshava in order to then think about what's going to be when he gets married, and therefore he's going to be potter as a result of that tirda de machshava.